So at 4 o'clock this morning, I couldn't study much last night, but 4 o'clock this morning, God woke me up with a sermon going through my head. And I thought, I better get up and take some notes. So, yes, that's always a blessing to have that happen. But it was around about 5:30 maybe, or 5. I couldn't take it anymore. I was too worn out. And I said, I've got to go lay down. And so I went back to bed. But here's the notes that I wrote. I was really concerned with with what God was showing me and giving me to think on, the maintaining a spiritual health in our lives. That was really running through my head, and I thought all the years of spiritualization, some things that have gone on in our life or around us, and the world that we live in, and so on. And I thought, we really need something like this little booklet. We've had these around all the time, but they aren't out too much, I guess, at certain places in the building. But these are around, and there's quite a few of them yet. We handed these out, 7,000 of these, went out to the neighborhoods around here. Maintaining spiritual health. Maintaining spiritual health. And then down below it says 5-part devotional. It's an interactive kind of idea. 5-part devotional. And it just shows family. 2 families are shown in the front. Of how we keep spiritual health in our homes and in our lives. So that would be the title of it, Maintaining Spiritual Health. Then I started thinking about the old church buildings that are around. And I know I've talked sometimes about the old church in Canada, 2 of them up there, and Pearl's church that she went to in Idaho. And here we've got 2 or 3 in Oklahoma, that the buildings are getting in trouble. This building was old when we got it. So you kind of go back through time and you're saying, well, this building got old and that got old. Different denominations even. You see the congregation getting older and older. And what the building looks like, or the maintaining of the building. So, of course, you go through all the things in your head about who changes the furnace filter, how loaded up is it. And one of our neighbors had a fire in the clothes dryer. And, you kind of go down through your mind saying, if it's not maintained, it's going to go to pieces. It's going to get ruined or burnt up or something. And, of course, we had the little problem here this morning. Well, actually yesterday sometime. And so it all takes things to keep it running. And you think of, did this church that we're in here, the people that owned it before, how bad did things get before they had to give it up? They had to sell it. And we happened to be there. God got somebody to drive past here and said, look there, how did they know this building was for sale? But the pastor of this building had already said, the building is getting deterioration. It's getting in trouble. The older people that were here could not maintain it. Physically, especially, money, tithing, offerings, they couldn't maintain it. So they needed to let it go. And where did they go to church? But people had moved away, and people had got married and moved, or job took them away, or other things that probably happened. But they had to go. And the building slowly dies away. They probably had classes for all the different children's ages. And this was a fairly common organization that the building belonged to. So they would have all the classes. They would have the baptistry behind me here, was here. They had the bowls for foot washing service. Interesting. Not many churches do that. So they were keeping the Lord's Supper like we are, like we do. So that was interesting to see those things. The thought passed my mind over how many years would you have sermons available for that church that was here. and just how they were worded, who did them. Like us, we have 2 or 3 people that preach, but no maintenance can ruin the building. I understand this carpet came from another church nearby. Rather than being purchased new, it was used, if I'm right. And so everything gets worn down. I know the carpet in this other side room over here had gotten so rotten that the vacuums were sucking up the carpet in pieces. Yeah. So you go through a thing of maintenance. Well, what about our spiritual lives? How many knew I had this book? I just told you too that we had 7,000 of them that we put together in packets with other materials, and I walked to those doors here in this neighborhood around here. Somebody was helping putting them together. Somebody was sticking labels on the back. Okay. So we need to watch the things that are going on around us and help the church to survive. What did I have on here too? But no maintenance can really get you in trouble. For the buildings and for the teachings and for, I wrote in here Fort Smith, 100 years. What'll this building look like when it's 100 years old? And this is, I guess, this building came into existence sometimes in, let's see, if I take 40 plus 20, about 60 years ago, this building came into existence. So how long can it stand up? So it takes a lot of maintenance to keep our Westside Church of God going so that it'll survive. A lot of little things. Well, the air conditioner, we had one set of air conditioners went bad, furnace and air conditioners, and they had to be replaced. The air conditioners were in the back of the building, and nobody ever bothered it. And then along came the service people, and when the air conditioner or furnace went bad, they put it internal on the other side of the buildings and they ripped it off. Along came somebody and tore off the air conditioners, and so we had to replace it. But you have to do these maintenance items on them, or it would really go to pieces. Anyway, so the air conditioner's been changed 3 times since air conditioners were available at a decent price. That's not really that far back. It's not really that long ago. Anyway, our spiritual lives. Where's our air conditioner? How much have we worked at our spiritual life? What have we done with our spiritual life? To take Bible readings, example for our Westside Church, the Bible readings. When we used to read the chart on the wall there, we could read them together. And I remember the Tacoma Church, if you didn't have it quite memorized or couldn't see it very well, you'd open your Bible to the verse and to the chapter with that portion in it, and you'd all recite the Bible verses. Well, you know what? There's always something that throws a monkey wrench into the cogs or the gears. We used to all use the King James English. So if we read together, it was King James. Now, what is there, about 20 styles of Bibles? I don't know how many there are, but there's plenty. So if you started to read it, it would be bedlam. Everybody trying to read from their book. Anyway, that's one thing. The schooling. Pearl and I have talked about that over and over, about in our home churches, we would have homework to do. So you'd go home and you'd study the Sabbath School lesson. Sabbath School. It was a school. So we studied those things. We read the chapters. We read the material that was for that lesson, and then we memorized a memory verse. So this is something that was everywhere. I'll bet you a number of churches here in Oklahoma did exactly the same as we did in Canada. That was just the style of the era. In regular schools, how long does it take to kill the area, to destroy the part of the country that you're in? About 12 years. Grade 1, 2, 3, 4. 12 years. Take the Bible out of the school. Take prayer out of the school. What you got left? Something that's going downhill every year. By 12 years, you've lost your community. The nature of your community, the feelings of your community, the way that it functions. I remember watching a video that was on TV years ago. Boy, that's a bundle of years ago. 39 years ago, maybe a little more. America, You're Too Young to Die. And I guess it's still on YouTube. You could probably look it up and watch it. And they said, well, what makes America great? The churches. What was taught in the churches. The Bibles were taught in the churches. Wow. And you take that out of the schools, prayer out of the school, Bible reading out of the school. You can't even have the book in the school anymore. So about 12 years will do you in. Then they started thinking of some more. That was number one. Number two is take the Bible readings out of the school, that's for sure, and out of the homes. Homes used to read the Bibles together. The family would read. I can remember my family relatives, and if you went over to eat, they had a little thing with cards in it, and you'd pick up a card and put it in the back after you've read it, and then the next one you take it out and put it in the back when you've read it. And that usually was passed around the table. Everybody read a Bible verse. Does anybody do that anymore? I don't know. Hardly ever hear of people doing that. Probably the little holder that had the Bible verses in it are gone too. So Bible reading is gone in the American homes. And church going, everybody used to go to church, especially before television. Or the main listening to television was on a news hour later in the evening, towards the evening, or a program in the middle of the night that somebody would say, well, you can watch one before you go to bed. Or for me, I had to go over to the neighbors. We didn't own a television set while I was at home. So you take the Bible out. You take the Wednesday night meetings out of the mix of your home life. Take the Wednesday night meeting out, the Saturday night meeting, the Wednesday night meeting. So you take these out of the family's homes by either not offering it or nobody showing up. That's going to ruin your church. So I was thinking a lot on these things. Oh, one thing that we had, I wanted to make sure I mentioned this one and this one. Reading at church. If you're reading at church and reading together, looking at things together, talking about it together, this was my beginning. It was in Pearl's church as well. This is from her mother. No, this is from a minister that gave it to us for our wedding anniversary. But my parents had the exact same book. The pastor had started a new church, and so he bought these pews out of theaters that would fold up, when you want to walk in and out. Then you fold them down, sit on them. But he made a bench across the front where you could put a book on there as a book holder and open it up, and then you could study. So this is what we studied, the new Bible home instructor. I thought, wouldn't it be funny to have just the Bible home instructor and see how far back? Well, I did have one for 1919. So the original Bible home instructor, this is the new Bible home instructor. And but we would go through this. The first part of it was on every book of the Bible, just a little story about it, short, what's in there. And then there was biblical topics. We'd say doctrines. Biblical doctrines were in here. And they weren't really extensive, as you can tell, you wouldn't get too far with it. But and I meant to carry up the one that we use here for Wednesday nights or Sabbath mornings. Same idea as Bible topics, with material in it for us to know. And then the later part of this was a little bit different. I can't even remember now what's in the back, but I got little stickers, little folders in here, and Bible lessons and studies. I don't know how many topics, but they're pretty good. The history of Israel was in here. The Israeli people were thinking about going home to the promised land, to their home country. And they did. 1947, 48, 49. Yeah, they started going home. They were allowed to go home. They were allowed to have the country as their own back there. Wow, and miracles were happening. You wanted to hear about that. You wanted to look up here and say, what's happening now in Israel? What does the Bible say about what's going to happen in Israel? Very good stuff. So that was encouraging. But what did Israel do in the Bible times? Did they always run it perfect? No. What about Josiah? He was a good king. So he got the people together and he said, this is not right that our church is not being upkept. And it was a stone church, okay? Stone and mortar, or big chunks of stones that they would keep together. And after so many years, even stones will wear down and fall over and break. And so he said, we need to get people going in and clean the church. Wow, you think, how can a stone building get that dirty that they're going to send a crew in to clean it up? Okay. Well, he did. And they were going to start services one day. Didn't really say how, I guess. But they found a book. They didn't know, what do you do with this? What is this all about? And so those people that found it started reading it, and they said, oh boy, we're going to have to explain to God one day because we didn't keep this book the way we're supposed to. We weren't keeping the Bible services like we were supposed to. That better show the king, you suppose. So they made a delegation, I suppose, and went in and talked with the king, and they read the Bible to him. Of course, the main thing that they were talking about there was the beginning chapters, you might say, the first 5 chapters. Books, the first 5 books, the book of the law. And they read it, and the king got excited. Oh boy, we're in trouble with God. We didn't do what God said we should do. And so he started planning things, and they planned to read it to all the people as well as reading it just to the king and whoever was nearby to hear it. So they started reading it, and you know what happened? A revival broke out. Yeah, wow, a revival broke out. The people started realizing how much they should be doing for God or with God's information. Remember the family homes? The Bible says, I could look it up and read it, but that you're supposed to teach your children when you're standing up, when you're sitting down, when you're walking in the way, and so teach your children. And then it says in another place that when you come to this part of service to God, the children must say to the father, what is this service all about? And the father had to be ready to answer the child with the truth of the matter. What is it all about? And thus it would stay in the knowledge of the children, and they would know it. They would ask. And you know what happens if you don't ask? It doesn't get repeated. The New Testament says that we are to teach the elders of the church, the deacons of the church, the members of the church, so that they can pass it on to the next generation, their children, plus the other people that will come into the service. They're supposed to pass it along to the next generation, and that to the next generation. Well, we surely wouldn't ever lose it then, would we? Oh boy. The people that escaped from other countries, like even my mother and her family, they knew why they had a problem over there in the foreign countries. They came for freedom, but they also came for freedom of religion, or certain kinds of religious activities that could get you in trouble in another country. So people were starting to serve the Lord, and things went well until somebody thought, oh, those church people, they're spending too much on their buildings. Maybe we ought to tax this or tax that, or make it more difficult for them to build churches or have services and so on. And now in my home country, they put chain link fences around the churches. They don't want you to be in there. Wow. That wasn't very long ago. My goodness. So what is happening? Israel had lost their idea of maintenance. This would be more New Testament type of maintenance, spiritual life and so on. They were more physical, where they had to have a place to kill the animals and slay them, bleed out some blood and sprinkle the blood here and there and so on. We don't have to do any of that. So it should be so easy that we have no problem keeping our churches going, right? How come the United States is just about dead spiritually? Wow. Used to be a big building up here, 50th and May, North 50th and May. It's been plowed over and buried in dirt. There's a good brand name of church, Presbyterian. Big church. And the people got less and less. Children moved away. Children found different jobs, went different places. Got less and less. Money went down. They couldn't maintain it. The kingdom in Israel, they got so bad that they've had bad kings even in the southern kingdom. You take some of those books that shows the kings of the north and kings of the south and which ones were bad and which ones were good, and so it doesn't take you very long at all to find out when they had fallen and what they did, what was wrong with what they did. And they lost their kingdoms. They lost their kings. They lost their religion, their faith. God used to rule directly over the people. Well, that went away. He still wanted to, but the people weren't interested. Throw a party and nobody shows up, that kind of idea. I've listened to some of the ministers pleading on audio recordings, saying that they had of this faith and that faith and that faith. They had had services and organized and planned it, and nobody showed up. Wow, how long did they think they were going to keep their church going? It's not their fault, it's the individuals, the people that are not interested. So there's levels of teaching of the Bible and learning from the Bible that would help keep that up, but we're not maintaining. Just what we've got, we're not maintaining. I know I've said this over and over, but the church in Canada sold for $199,000, and the people that were attending didn't even keep the lights on. They weren't giving enough offerings to the church to keep the lights on. So it got sold. The church in Idaho, family members had made pulpits and made other things to make the church work, donated the land, and after about 50 years, just fell through, failed. My mind was going round and round on this, and I thought one day we're going to walk across here and fall through because it's moldy underneath, is rotted. What did Jesus say in the New Testament about don't put your money where the mold and dust and rot will steal it from you? Oh my goodness. But it's a reality. There was water underneath there and no ventilation. Interesting. It comes right close home then when you feel all of that. But even the king had to be wakened up. Say, what's lost in the church building? Clean it out and find, oh, you found a Bible. Why did they lose the Bible? Lack of use. Lack of study and having classes, having Bible classes. In our travels, we found people in churches that thought Sabbath School was not for taking stuff home to learn. You don't have homework for Sabbath School. Why not? Oh, schools don't do it now anyway. There's no example from anywhere. Don't study anymore. Don't want to do homework. Don't want to do learning. Don't want to learn anything. That's coming into the church, sneaking into the church. The cleaning of the church, when they took that, they had to come in, stone building, and you're going to try to clean this building. It must have been pretty grim. They must have used it for storage more than Bible understanding and promoting righteousness. Must have used it just for storage. But we got to do better than that. And if we do, how long will our buildings last? I'm thinking, well, the house that we're in now is about as old as this church. So how long could it last? Even wood houses can last 100 years if they're taken care of. Maintenance. Even a wood house can last 100 years. This building has brick on it. Still needs maintenance. And that may bring us that Josiah revival. What do we need to teach so that people will come? The Bible, right. We need to teach the Bible. There is a kind of an awakening happening. We're hearing of people that have gone to church buildings and have gone here, gone there. It seems like they are awakening to a study of truth and righteousness. It's weak because there's no support from outside. Nothing for schools, nothing for, unless they went to a church school somewhere. But even then, some of the church schools are getting very thin in their teaching. So I'm just saying that we all need to be thinking seriously of how much we prize the Heavenly Father's Bible, teachings, His ways, our ways. I'm always surprised, and yet I know better, how many blessings we get from the Heavenly Father. Just this and then that and then that. Wow, look at this. And you try to tell somebody else, especially those that are unfamiliar with the Church of God, Seventh-day, Westside Church of God, Seventh-day, they're unfamiliar with it, and they thought you're stretching it. Time and chance happens to everybody. I've heard that said quite a few times. Not necessarily. We can tilt that balance by serving the Heavenly Father, and He's going to send us blessings for our church, for our buildings, for our people, for the attendance, for, on and on and on. We could say that God is going to really do this. But we need to support all of that going on with our bodies, maintenance for ourselves and being ready. If we had 3 to 5, say, a nice little class of little children, who's going to teach it? Have we dropped the ball? What if we had teenagers come with 3, 4, well, the class I was in the teenage years, I guess there was about 10. Yeah, because when we started going out as a group, young people take their cars and they'd all go for Chinese food or something. They'd all go out or go roller skating. We usually had more than 10 that were approximately in that same age group. Now, am I stretching that? No. You know how many cars we used to have parking at this church building? This building. When we came here 15 years ago, when we came, there was a string of cars across the front, so many that we dare not leave any more out there because people wouldn't be able to come in and feel like they were welcomed because there's no place to park. So they'd come around this side, through that gate over here, go around this side, and they'd park. We wondered whether we should put them on angles or square. It's easier to turn this way, easier. What a problem when you got that many cars to try to get them accommodated. What do you do with the pews? Do we have enough pews? That was a wonderful problem, wasn't it? We had at least 5 cars, probably more. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can count 5 just real easy, parking in the back to leave space in the front because it wasn't, it's all the way across. We started thinking, well, you should park with your nose towards the street so that you can back out easier in the parking area. Problem. Isn't that a wonderful problem? Where are they now? How many cars parked out front now? Problems. What is keeping them from us? Well, of course they die. That's too. Can't help it. Yeah, some people have moved away, some have died. If we asked how many were here when I came in 1990, that's tough. Oh, or no, 1990 even, yeah. And we were away for 12 years. We came back, now it's been 14, 15 years. If I asked who was here when I came back, one person this morning that was here in 2008, January of 2008. We've got to do something. Those that are here, we need to do something that will cause people to stay when they come in, learn our value system right away. We need greeters, you know. Usually a greeter will say, well, the bathroom's down there for the ladies, the men's is over here, and look at all the booklets on the wall. Here, have a pamphlet for today's meeting and, you know, a greeting. We don't have those. Yeah. We've got to do something or it's going to sink. This building is going to do without people. Anyway, last week I already got pretty serious about some things like that, and I didn't mean to hit it twice, but God gave me this. I'd hate to not use what God gives me. And I got out the paper and I started writing. That's why it's this kind of a booklet, but on computer. Because God wanted this to be said and gave me these messages. Well, that's where I better stop. There's all kinds of things that could be mentioned about maintenance on the building and about attendance, and yeah, it's got to be in your hearts. And we have, I've heard of other churches that say that the congregation that's already there ought to be in every meeting of that group every time. What if company came? What if it wasn't just one family missing? What if everybody was missing? Yeah. And one day God's going to say, what did you do with what I gave you? My goodness. Do you want to be in the lineup to apologize? No, I don't think we want to. We need to clear our lives up now and do all that we can to make this building work and this group of people work so that we can maintain our spiritual life and pass it on to the next generation. May God bless you.